Hello, and welcome back to the Dark Hours. If this is your first time listening, welcome, and I hope you enjoy my stories. I'm John Nathan, and if you'll permit me, I'd like to be your personal storyteller in all things delightfully dark, terrifically terrifying, and fantastically frightening. So, if you're an avid fan of horror and horror sci fi, and if you are ready to have the best time of your life being scared, you have certainly found the right place. The dark hours are between midnight and 4 a.m. That's four short stories per season, and we will be uploading one story per week. I would like for you to think of this channel as your own private escape from the true horrors, the horrors of reality. I want you, my hopefully someday soon loyal listener, to take my world and make it your own. I have chosen the following tale to remind us all that being a jerk gets us nowhere, except maybe trapped inside a field of blood. I have entitled this gut churning tale The Metal Box. Adam Monroe was a young man in the unique position of attending the college of his choosing. You see, his father, Dave, if you were a friend or a colleague, Monroe, was a nuclear engineer. And with a career like that, sending your only son to Harvard or Yale wouldn't even put a dent in your bank account, or accounts in this case. And Ivy League was certainly what David Monroe had in mind for his son. However, as it so often occurs, the son doesn't always follow along the same wave as his father. In fact, more often than not, the son wants to go his own way, whittle out his own life with his own knife. Adam was no exception to that rule. And oh, how it pissed off the old man something awful. Not only had Mr. Monroe booted his son out of his lavish living quarters at the Monroe estate, he had also cut him off financially. His exact words had been, "You want to go your own way, boy? Then by God, you'll go through every inch of it by yourself, just like I had to." And that had been that. The following day, Adam packed his clothes, taking a few other items he might need, like his laptop, for instance, and left the Monroe estate for good. He'd even chosen the college he would be attending. Although it had to be an undergrad school now that he no longer had his father's funding to help him, he would need a cheap school and as much student aid as possible. He decided on Greenbrier State Community College in the town of Greenbrier, Tennessee. It was funny. Greenbrier was the town, the state was Tennessee, but seeing as how there was already a Tennessee State University, he supposed they had to go with the name of the town. Adam had planned his trip out on his iPhone 17 Pro Max. However, he had done so thinking he would be taking his Porsche 911 Turbo, a present gifted to him by none other than his father, and his father had almost laughed him out of the garage. "When I said you'd be taking every step on your own, I meant it, buddy boy. You think I drove a damn Porsche to college?" David had said, snatching the keys to the Porsche out of his son's hand so fast it was damn close to a magic trick. Adam had wanted to ask him how he was supposed to make the 3 hour trip to the school, but his father would have a clever answer for that as well. The man seemed to be made of them, and there was a bus stop not 1 mile down the road. He knew it was there, and he supposed his father knew it as well. It wasn't surprising. His father's intelligence and quick wit were what had made a man like David Monroe what he was, a business tycoon. The bus arrived at Greenbrier State Community College right on time. As soon as he stepped off the bus, he took a look around. The place wasn't half bad, and he liked the look of the iron arch he stood before, as if by walking through it, it would seal a sacred deal. Adam even been informed about how he could work on campus to pay off any tuition that the Pell Grant wouldn't cover. He would finish his remedials here, then go on to a 4 year university. And it wouldn't be Ivy League, that much was for damn sure. If his father could become a self made multimillionaire, then there was no reason Adam couldn't do the same. Hordes of students walked this way and that. Some rode scooters while others rode bikes. There were even a few on hoverboards, and they were pretty damn good on them. They swayed with the kind of adroitness only the young could manage. Adam had never had any interest in them, though he had a few Buell motorcycles at the house. Well, he supposed he didn't have them any longer. And what house? His home was here now, at Greenbrier State Community College in the state of Tennessee. And it would remain this way as long as Adam didn't go crawling back to his dad and agree on going Ivy. But that was never going to happen. It wasn't going to happen because he was just like the old man, stern and bullheaded. Once he set his mind to something, trying to deter him would be tantamount to trying to pull a treasured bone from the jaws of a bulldog. Careful not to bump into any of the throngs of people that seemed content on standing around the large iron arch, Adam picked up his duffel bag and leather satchel and made his way through the open gate. It was a little after 5 in the afternoon when he finally found himself at Madison Dormitory. All the students called it Mads. According to Brandon Elkin, his roommate, they call this place Mads because of its location. It's like 100 or 200 yards from everywhere, except the commons. I suppose it drives some people crazy, having to walk so far every day. I use my bicycle. And the name's Brandon I didn't ask you your name, Adam replied. And I give zero shits about knowing it. What's the commons? Asked Adam, sitting his things down on his side of the room. Oh, okay, replied Brandon Elkin. He then cleared his throat. So, the commons is like right down the sidewalk. Out the window to the left, you can see the walkway that gets you there. It's where we go to eat. And there's good food there. And also, if you drove here, don't ever move your car unless you're going home to visit the fam because someone will take your spot. Oh, and you need to walk down to admin and get a commons card so you can eat. Otherwise, you'll be screwed. I can't believe the crap they don't tell new students here. I mean, it's like they just expect you guys to know. You know? Adam sighed a little as he began to take the bed sheets out of his duffel. He had a talker for a roommate, and that didn't jibe well with him. He was a lot of things. Running was his passion, and he planned to sign up for track as soon as possible, perhaps even the following day. He was also an avid reader. He cared for music a good deal, but he loathed communicating with others. He had no clue why, he just did. Not a big talker? Asked Brandon Elkin. What gave it away, Brandon? Adam thought, but decided against saying that out loud. Adam could be an asshole, all right, but he tried his best not to be. To conform to the status of asshole would be to become more like his father, and he'd be dipped in the brown, smelly stuff before he allowed that to happen. No, I guess not. I mean, I don't like to talk much. Is that cool? I'm not trying to be an ass or anything. It's just, Brandon, put up a hand. Say no more, bro. I know I talk entirely too much. It seems they screwed up a little in the classification department, huh? He finished with a hee-haw kind of laugh that was near unbearable. Adam only nodded and smiled a little. He was a very handsome young man. His face was smooth and he had full, pouty lips. In fact, his facial features were more than a little akin to the late Jim Morrison's. Adam even had similar hair, wavy and full, only Adam's hair was blonde and his eyes were a sky blue. He had an athletic physique, and when all of this was mixed together, it made him akin to a walking, talking sex symbol. And when he had smiled a little at his roommate, Brandon, he hadn't liked the way the dude had smiled back. If old Brandon turned out to be a puffer, he'd go to the classification department himself and ask them how they would classify getting their asses kicked. Would they put that one under violence or self expression? And lucky for Adam, Brandon turned out to be a night owl as well. He was bent over a book already while Adam was bouncing a tennis ball off the wall, catching it and throwing it back again. Does me doing this piss you off, Brandon? It's okay to tell me if it does, Adam said in a playful, low tone. Brandon looked up and smiled with his lips closed. Then he said, whatever floats your boat, Hoss. There isn't crap to do in this pissy little town, is there, Hoss? It had been a question that was shitty in its deliverance, and Adam knew Brandon picked up on his vibe, but Brandon answered anyway. Brandon had also picked up on the Hoss reference that had been thrown back at him. See, he had Adam's number almost from the beginning. The kid came from money. That was obvious by the brand of his clothing. The buckle, most likely. Lucky brand jeans, affliction shirts, bull boxer boots, or something like it. Perhaps Doc Martens. And he probably shopped online at all the major clothing stores that catered to the well off. Even his skin appeared flawless, and he had perfect hair. There was clue number 2. But Adam was intelligent as well, and not just a little. He had to give him that. Brandon knew his roomie was very smart, smarter than himself, even. And secretly, Brandon didn't feel there were many who were. He had always felt pride in that. In fact, Brandon Elkin was a member of Mensa. He seriously doubted if Mr. Adam Monroe was. You see, guys as smart as him thought the whole program was a waste of time, something to feel a part of so they wouldn't feel completely shut out. Normally, the ones who didn't join wound up taking a long walk off a short pier, punching their time card, washing their mouths out with buckshot, you name it. It was no good for an intelligent person to feel all alone. He doubted very much that Mr. Adam Monroe had ever felt an ounce of lonesomeness in the entirety of his petted life. Well, I don't know. What do you enjoy doing, Adam, besides bouncing balls off walls, reading, and speaking to people as though they were mentally inferior to you? Brandon's heart began to thump hard in his chest. His palms began to sweat. He'd never been in a physical altercation before, and he didn't intend to now. In fact, he very much regretted what he had said and wished he could take it back. But like his dad used to say, once it's out, and there's no bringing it back in. Thankfully, Adam only laughed. Intelligence is a relative thing, bro. If I excel where you fail, then maybe I fail where you excel. Correct? He replied, although he pronounced correct like correct. Fair enough. You still haven't answered me, though. I don't know, Brandon. I like to run. Run my ass off. And if you even attempt to psychoanalyze that, I'll leave you crying in your sleep. Psychology is the bastard son of philosophy, and you could say I'm a bit Socratic, as well as Descartes. I've probably read over 10,000 books because I really read fast, even faster than I run, replied Adam. This whole back and forth shit with his roommate was really grating on his nerves. He needed an escape. Fair enough. There might be a track across the main road. There's a huge building there. I think it's supposed to be some kind of military experimental hospital or some crap. Ooh, I can feel the suspense rising, said Adam, really laying on the sarcasm. But he had to admit the whole track thing was definitely intriguing. That's nice, Adam. Anyways, I heard there's a track that circles the whatever the place is. But the gate is on an automatic device that opens and closes it. It's the kind on wheels, you know. I figured that much, Brandon. It must be a wide gate as well to accommodate vehicles, no doubt. Adam finished, a secret smile curling inside him. If Mr. Talkie likes to talk, then he might as well have some fun with him. Ding, ding, ding. You just won $1,000,000. Adam made no reply, which normally made the one on the other end of the conversation all the livider. If Brandon was mad, he was hiding it awfully well. There was no change in his profile and no animosity detected in the atmosphere. Score one for Brandon Elkin, Adam mused. Oh, yeah, so the automated fence. It opens at 6 in the morning and closes at midnight. If you don't get out by midnight, you'll be sleeping there. And if that happens, even if you screamed your ass off and some wandering individual heard your cries, there's not a lot they could do about it. Not unless you want them or you to call 911 and have a rescue team come out and get you. Although I'm sure the place is replete with cameras, so I suppose the guards would end up catching you long before anyone else would. That would land you in jail. You see, it's against the rules to stay past. I got you, Brandon. Or do you prefer Mr. Elkin? Brandon knew it was another stab meant only for Adam Monroe, but he answered anyway. That would have been a question better proffered at the beginning of our conversation, Adam. Or would you prefer I called you Mr. Monroe? Score two, you ugly bastard, thought Adam, but again restrained himself. I feel a first name basis would be best throughout the longevity of our stay together, Brandon. So, Brandon started, but stopped once he saw Adam insert earbuds in his ears as he started undressing. He was built like the statues of Greek gods. He had muscles on top of muscles. Brandon caught himself looking at him a little too long, and Adam shot him a look full of contempt. This made Brandon quickly look away. Adam Monroe had one hell of a mean mug. It was quite intimidating, in fact. The way his slightly arched brows furrowed and his face seemed to widen, but did so in a subtle way. And those perfect lips of his pulled together, creating a grimace that was damn near haunting. It was in that moment Brandon Elkin decided he would think twice before pissing off this guy again. The way that Adam's face had looked, murder might be another thing he enjoyed. The dorm room was thick with animosity now, and Brandon couldn't wait until Adam was gone. From his peripheral, Brandon watched surreptitiously as Adam donned a sleeveless shirt and a pair of Nike running shorts. He decided to stop sneaking looks the moment Adam sat on his bunk to put on his Nike running shoes. So, across the road, right? Adam asked with more than a drop of venom laced in his voice. Yes, Brandon replied, sheepishly nodding his head as he did so. And let's keep our eyes on other things rather than one another when we're changing clothes. You may swing that way, bro, but I don't swing that way. I only looked because you have a lot of muscles. I was never able to acquire large muscle mass. No matter how hard I try, I don't have time for your pity party, bro. Just don't ever look at me when I'm changing. Not ever again. I won't, Brandon replied simply, and he meant it. He wouldn't. Not ever again. It had gotten later than Adam had thought. As soon as he noticed it was dark out and the moon, almost full, not quite, could be seen easily in the starlit night sky, he knew he was cutting it close. That was, if he wanted to get a good run in. He checked his iPhone. Damn, he thought. It was 15 minutes past 9. It would appear as though he wouldn't be getting in as much running as he had thought. The main road in front of the campus was completely bereft of any traffic. Then Adam recalled what his possibly queer roommate had said about not moving your car because others would be apt to steal the spot. But there was no traffic at all, and there should be some. A little mild traffic, one would think. It was late, he supposed, but not that late. As he dashed across the street, the thought fell from his mind. He had one thing and one thing only on the brain: running, running, and maybe some more running. He walked slowly into the tarmac paved drive that was the main entrance, he deduced by the layout of the building. It was an architectural monstrosity, all right. Brandon had been correct about that as well. And due to such, it was very difficult to see the building's front entrance the moment he stepped through the open gate. There were 3 signs, all white with red block lettering. Each one said the very same thing. Had Adam have not looked to the left as he was passing through, he would have never have seen them at all. They were attached to the chain link gate, probably with tiny metal rings at all 4 corners of each one. There was a good-sized thicket on either side of the gate, and the small blacktop parking lot he had walked across to where he stood now. Had he not walked closer and inspected them, he wouldn't have been able to even read what was written on them. It was a street lamp that made it possible. There were 2 of them, one located at either side of the gate. There were coils and coils of razor wire as well that ran along the gate and the fence's summit, but those could not be seen. It would have been difficult even in the daytime. The fence ran off into the thicket on both sides of the entrance. In fact, the tall cyclone fence circumvented the entire property of the U.S. government. The sign simply read, "Opens at 0600, closes at 0000. If caught trespassing outside posted times, you will be prosecuted." In smaller font, it read, "Enter at your own risk." And neither the chief operator nor staff of this facility will be under any legal obligation or lawsuit should you become injured. It opens at 6 in the morning and it closes at 12. If you're not out by then, you'll be sleeping there. The one good thing about having around a motor mouth was that they gave you vast amount of information. Some of it helpful, most of it not. As he crossed the threshold, the driveway broke off to the left and ran alongside the track, parallel, until the two split in a kind of Y. The driveway straight to the large building, and the track veered off to the right. There was a wooden post with the number 1 carved neatly in. "I guess this is where everyone starts," he said simply to the night air. Normally, Adam wasn't easily frightened, but something about this place kind of creeped him out. Maybe it was just because he was the only one out here, at least that he knew of. He supposed there could be another runner or 2. He passed the post that had the number 1 carved in, and onto the track. It was one of those rubbery like tracks that felt soft under the shoes and had a little bounce to it. That made him smile, a thing that Adam Monroe seldom did. There was also a street lamp that shone down on the track. There were several of them, in fact. They lined the track about 20 or 30 feet apart. Adam looked down and saw something painted in red. Start /finish. And this was underlined with a blue line. Okay, let us begin, he said in a voice just above a whisper. This first thing to get out of the way was stretching his legs. Part of him hated that part because it took up time, precious time he could be running. But another part of him loved it, the way a junkie loves the ritual of getting high, getting together their DOC or drug of choice. Adam knew all too well about that. You see, he had had to go to a treatment facility to get off steroids. Once the stretching was out of the way, he took his position on the start-finish line. He gave out a deep breath, then took off like a shot. And man, was he fast. Ropes of muscle could be seen overlapping one another in his quads, and his calves bulged with muscle to the point veins stood out like lightning bolts. The same proved true for his arms and parts of his chest. Up ahead, he could see where the trail curved gradually to the right. There was an incline as well, and the rest of the trail ran beyond the curve was a mystery due to the incline in the forest. He loved the trail thus far, and the woods made it all the better. Just when he was making the curve, he noticed something on the other side of the hill he had had to go around. He almost stopped for a moment to check it out, find out what it was. But it was not worth him stopping. For one, his leg muscles would start to cool down, and he couldn't have that. It was a metal box, a very large metal box. It appeared to be 7 or 8 feet high, and the width was the same, creating, well, a box. He thought he saw some slits in one of its sides, the side he could see. Not any that were done maliciously by drunk college students. No, these were made along with the box, like ventilation. There was what appeared to be a door or large access panel in what must be the front. Most likely a power supply, kind of like a large generator, he thought. But he put the image out of his head entirely. The last thing he needed was to start thinking too much about something like a generator. He was running, and a cool wind sowed through, wafting it against his face and through his shoulder-length blonde hair. God bless running. It felt so good. He simply couldn't understand those that didn't care for it. Well, that wasn't exactly true. Not entirely. If a person loathed exercise, it was merely because they lacked the ambition to start exercising in the first place. But once one started, it became an addiction. To each their own, his father was wont to say. He also added that that adage only proved worthy of repeating when it came to success. He was now starting down the second part of the track, staring down at his shoes, then his legs as they scissored away, and the tarmac that passed by underneath. Adam liked to imagine that while he was running, he was eating the track or road, devouring it. And once he was fully around the curve, he saw something else interesting up ahead. There was a wooden bridge with wooden railing. There was a space as well where the forests were separated a little more than it already was, until the bridge ended and the woods were back to their lush foliage and tall trees again. A brook, a creek, or something. That's why the bridge, he thought with a heavy heart. Heavy because he wanted to stop on the bridge and take in the scenery, but he couldn't. Maybe some other time. He insisted that he must go on. So there's a cool bridge, so what? He told himself. And if he wanted to, he could always check it out once he was finished running and doing his cool down walk. A fast paced walk that slowly lowered the heart. When his right shoe landed on the first board of the bridge, he caught another signpost out of his right side peripheral. He turned his head in time to see the number 1.5 carved into the post. He had already ran 1.5 miles. That was impressive. It had been at least 6 days since the last time he had ran, and to make the kind of time he was making was a first for him, a new personal record. He took his iPhone out of its sleeve on his right upper arm and saw it was only 9:28 p.m. Figuring in the length of time it had taken him to get to the track, stretch his legs, and get to running, that meant he had run 1.5 miles in about 10.5 minutes. But he wasn't about to stop and celebrate. He could celebrate once the run was done. Another one of his father's dictums. No celebrating anything unless your goal is achieved. His Nike running shoes made soft clopping sounds along the bridge. And he had been correct. There was a creek, although it was near impossible to see much of it due to the street lamps that lined the bridge. There were only 4, 2 on either side, but they shone down brightly. The bridge, he figured as he counted his footfalls, was at least 27 feet in length. That was a sizable bridge, but then so was the creek it ran across. The bridge was bowed at an upper angle as well, like an arch or a rainbow, so that no matter which way one was running, it was at an incline. And although Adam hadn't been able to see much of it, he could tell that the distance from the apex of the bridge to the creek below was about 5, maybe 6 feet. Why am I thinking about the bridge's measurements? What the hell do I care? He pondered as he ran. Once the bridge was behind him, the track ran straight. He only prayed it didn't run straight for too long. Besieged by trees, could fog or stale the mind's imagination, making to keep a good, steady, fast pace difficult. Still, could be worse. He could be running on a treadmill, and those he absolutely refused to dick around with. Who cares if they have a television in front of them as well? He had finally made the 3-mile run, which meant he had 1 or 2 more laps to go if he wanted a good workout. And seeing as how he was trying out for the track team tomorrow, he had to get in as much training as possible. Only, when he checked his cell again, As he was passing the finish line, he was dismayed. The time was now 10:45 p.m. That can't be right. Can it? Did I slow down somewhere? That damnable bridge, perhaps. Or that stupid metal box thing. He thought, trying his best to figure out where the lost time had gone. The saying, "time flies when you're having fun," came to mind, but this was insane. It should just now be turning 10 o'clock, not nearing the end of the hour. But in the end, what was there to do? He couldn't stop running, and one more lap, or 3 more miles, would put him dangerously close to midnight. He would just have to push himself harder. And harder he did. He ran, not like a wise young man, pacing himself and then at the last stretch giving everything he had left in the tank. Instead, he was cocky. And he was that by nature. All narcissists were, and Adam Monroe had learned from the best. His asshole dad. His mother, on the other hand, Irene Monroe, was always quick to point out that he'd never make any friends if he made everyone he encountered feel as though they were stupid. Well, who's the stupid one now, Adam? He thought, and seldom ever did he burn himself. Usually, he only did that when he felt defeated. And right now, he could feel it nipping at his heels as he ran faster and faster, as though he were outrunning failure, which, in a way, he supposed he was. But man, would he be cutting it close. Just leave, bro. Bro, you can get your run in tomorrow, and you'd be finishing strong, too. 1.5 miles in 10 minutes, bro? That's finishing pretty strong. I can't. I can make it before the gate closes. I know I can. I'm fast and I can make it. Hell, I'll have time to spare, he said to the night, his breathing labored, causing his words to spread out a bit. At first, he was doing just fine. Then, as he went to cross the bridge for the second time, the toe of his right shoe caught on the lip of the first board, and down he went, twisting his ankle as he did so. And oh God, did it hurt. He rolled from side to side on his back and holding one leg up so he could feel his ankle. He wasn't sure if lifting his leg up was a good idea or not. Adam could feel the injured ankle beginning to swell. He gnashed his teeth and cussed between breaths. The pain was such it was nearly driving him out of his mind. No longer was he concerned about running. Actually, he felt pretty stupid for doing so during the night. What was his mother's dictum she would tout every time he injured himself? How many times must you be told, Adam? Stupid hurts. Slowly, the pain began to abate. He took his phone off the armband it was held in and looked at the time again. It was 5 minutes after 11. If he were going to make the gate, he had to do so quickly as possible. Running was out of the question. There was that fence that ran along into the thicket on either side of the gate. He didn't know if it had anything at the top, like razor wire or something that would prevent him from scaling it. Although it was a speck of hope in an otherwise dismal situation, standing would have been near impossible had there not been the wooden railing on the bridge. He scooted himself over to it and pulled himself up. Thankfully, he was extremely fit and very strong. He had his father to thank for that, although he wasn't about to. The man had been the very devil to him in his youth, forcing him to lift weights, even supplying a little help when he would hit a plateau. Just a little stick in the hip, and Adam would blast past whatever weight he felt stuck on. After the first time his dad had stuck that needle in with the thin syringe, he was hooked. He started sneaking into his father's stash, grabbing a bottle or two of the stuff and using it quite often. He looked down at his phone again. The home screen showed that nearly 20 minutes had gone by. It was now 11:25. He'd have to cross through the woods to make it. And if he did that, he risked the possibility of messing himself up even worse than he already was. Still, it was the only way. Oh, he was going to make Brandon Elkin pay. That homosexual, faggot ass queer is going to pay. Nobody held you at gunpoint, Adam, the voice of reasoning came flooding in. And why do you throw around words like faggot and homo? Is it because you fear somewhere down deep that you may be? You are very beautiful, Adam Monroe. Do not a lot of very beautiful people tend to swing both ways sometimes? Shut the fuck up. If I could kill you without offing myself in the process, I would. I'm not gay, far from it. Besides, I got this ankle problem to work out, and going through the woods on a busted ankle isn't child's play. Adam used the railing to sidle down to where the bridge began. He peered over and saw the way the ground declined as it made its way into the creek. With a deep breath, he took one more look at his cell, which read 11:35 p.m. He had been berating himself over his sexuality for 10 damn minutes. Oh God, it's not possible, he said in a voice that came out as a whimper. Once he carefully stepped around the railing of the bridge, he slowly sat down. So, his shorts would be wet and dirty. Big deal. With any luck, Brandon would be fast asleep by the time he got back. And he would get back. There was no other alternative. No way was he sleeping inside this place like some kind of homeless person. And besides, what if he got caught? He didn't want to go to jail either. Adam Monroe was most certainly not built for jail, no matter how strong he was. Scooting along on his bottom, he made his way down the precarious ditch. It was a little dark, but he knew he hit the water when he felt it through his shoes. He grabbed one of the bridge's support posts and pulled himself to a standing position. Then he began to splash along through the shallow creek. It didn't even come up to the tops of his shoes, which was a good thing. The creek was relatively straight. He walked as fast as he could, as careful as he could, not wanting to think about the time, although he had to. Another glimpse showed him it was 11:43 p.m. He placed his phone back in its protective sleeve on his arm. He could possibly make it. Wouldn't that be some shit? Against all odds, Adam Monroe pulls off something his father, the great David Monroe, couldn't even dream of achieving. His arms swung back and forth as he hobbled along, causing water to splash him clear up to the bottoms of his shorts, but he didn't care one bit. He had a mission. And by God, when a Monroe was on a mission, nothing could stop them short of God. There was a moment when he thought he was going down for sure. But the stone underwater that had rocked one way when he had stepped on it rocked back in its place as he minutely changed his stance. And he was splashing through the creek once again. He was nearing the end, too. Through the foliage, he could see the gate. And yes, it was open. Only when he checked his phone once again, it was 11:58 p.m. And he still had at least 100 yards to cross on a sprained ankle. Even he had to consent to the fact that unless he could climb the fence or find some chink in it that he could work his way through, he was locked inside this place. Also, if he walked across the clearing, and he would have to, he would be seen for sure. You don't think that they saw you come in? If they saw you come in, they know you never left before the stroke of midnight, which means they most likely already know I'm here. Adam said to the creek and to the forest around him. If it was true, if they knew he was inside, then they were probably already sending guards out to fetch him and throw him in jail. Adam started to weep. Crying was something he didn't do much of because he was too afraid his father would call him a sissy and ask him if he wanted to wear a dress. The contempt Adam held towards his father was fathomless. If he had a child, there was no way he would treat him or her that way. No way would he speak to them the way his old man had spoken to him. Adam was an asshole, yes, but he wasn't beyond salvation either. Okay, no time for crying and waiting. I gotta act, he thought. Rather than attempt to walk across the clearing, he felt his chances would be better if he just stayed in the woods until the gate opened back up in the morning. Perhaps he would be hidden well enough in the woods. He turned to the right and allowed himself to fall face forward onto his palms. Suddenly, several sharp little twigs and rocks stung his palms badly. He wanted to cry out like he had wanted to on the bridge. Instead, he hissed out several colorful four-letter words, and as soon as he felt a little respite, Adam stood and staggered up the bank of the creek, glad to be out of it. That's when he heard the humming sound. It was low at first, then higher in frequency. There were other sounds as well, like clicks and clacks of metal striking plastic, perhaps? Hard plastic. Then there came another sound, This one sounded kind of like an elevator door slowly opening or closing, only with a hum, close to the one he had heard mere seconds ago. Only this one seemed to draw on. And all of these noises were coming from the same direction. Curious, Adam went to check it out. He was just at the tree line, a couple of feet from being out in the open. He had to be careful if he didn't want to get caught. He stepped closer and closer to the sounds until he could see where they were coming from. Although now he was coming up behind it, he could see clearly it was the metal box thing he had seen while he was running. And life was awesome. Before the sprained ankle and the agony that quickly followed. He was no doctor, but if it wasn't sprained, it was broken. Truth be known, he would have been a lot better off if it was broken. Suddenly, all the noise the thing was making stopped, and another noise took their place. It was a low, guttural sound, like a growl that was far worse than what might issue from a dog or, say, a wolf. This sounded almost like a lion. It sounded savage, old, primitive. Adam could smell it from the distance he stood to where the box was at the crate or kennel, enclosure, whatever the thing was. The odor reminded him of the county fair where they would have a petting zoo. There was definitely something animal about it. And that made all the sense in the world, seeing as how it had to be some kind of animal. A military experimental hospital. Brandon's words seemed to ride in on the wind and chill his bones to the marrow. And the worst part about it, the gate had closed 5 or 10 minutes ago. He didn't have to look at his cell, he just knew. Besides, at this point, he didn't care. When the thing that had been inside that large metal container circled to the back of it, its low growl like a deep rumble that seemed to issue from the bowels of hell caused Adam's heart to trip hammer in his chest as though it were trying to burst free. Suddenly, Adam saw it in all its horrific glory. The world stopped making sense the moment he saw this thing. It was about the size of a full-grown male silverback gorilla. It even favored one a little. It had long, muscular arms, but its legs were a tad shorter and appeared more like thick, powerful dog or wolf's legs. Another harrowing attribute was that it had either been shaved or just didn't grow hair, except for the horse-like mane that started on its head like a mohawk and traveled all the way down its back to its butt bone. There was no tail. Its head was the size of a beach ball. It was like looking at an optical illusion. Its ears were long and pointy, and they aimed straight up and back. It had a muzzle that protruded, but not as much as a dog's or a wolf's. Its teeth were gigantic, and there was a forest of them in its mouth. Its top and bottom canines almost resembled tusks, but shorter and sharper. The rest of its teeth appeared equally as sharp. It yawned, and its mouth opened impossibly wide, so wide a grown man could easily stick his head inside. Not that any sane man would want to. As Adam stood, Still, with piss running down his left leg and his blood feeling like ice water, the thing turned its gargantuan head in his direction. His bowels froze, locked in place like the rest of him. He couldn't move. He couldn't do anything but stare in awe of it. Steam roiled out of its cavernous maw, and Adam saw its eyes. They were a red, and they glowed maliciously in the darkness. And there was nothing natural about those small, beady red eyes. There was nothing natural about this beast at all. Oh, please, God, don't let it see me. Shelter me with invisibility. Strike this creature blind, he cried in his mind, a mind that felt close to breaking. But God had no intentions of intervening. Why should he? Adam Monroe had lived a life replete with luxuries beyond most of the world's imagination, and he had not once showed any sort of gratefulness, no gratitude for the things the Lord had blessed him with. After it walked a few feet, it walked on its hind legs and hands that were almost like a man's, but much bigger, much stronger, and each finger ended in long, thick black talons that tapered to a razor-sharp point. It stopped for a moment, looked around, like it was checking out the scenery. It could walk on its hind legs if it so chose, but it seemed to prefer walking more like that of an ape, using the help of its hands. It turned its monstrous head around once again, not facing Adam anymore, thank God. Perhaps his prayer had been answered after all. Adam watched with a mixture of fear and curiosity as it circled its enclosure. Only when it came back around, it stopped about 12 or so feet from him, where he hid, partly behind a tree. Those glowing red eyes, eyes about the size of an owl's or a small dog's, pierced his very soul. The malice that issued from those small, glowing red orbs was like nothing Adam had ever felt in his life. He had felt hated before, but a person was just not capable of this kind of hate. This was pure evil. It was an old evil, this thing, and he knew his number was up. He had no chance of getting out of this. He was wounded, but even if he wasn't, an animal or demon, Adam wasn't sure which, the size of this one would be able to run him down easily, no problem. And it would be impossible to fight off. At first, he didn't dare move an inch. Then it reared up on its hind legs, making it impossibly tall, and let out a savage roar so loud Adam thought it might scream the sky down. Adam's hands flew up to cover his ears, and he screamed as well. Then, in an instant, it dropped back down on all fours, and its red eyes were fixed back on Adam, causing Adam's eyes to fix on its eyes right back, like it had him in some kind of trance. And once again, that malice that should be impossible on earth penetrated him all over again. Adam quickly withdrew from his hiding place, finally breaking free from the hypnosis the thing had tried to put him under. He figured that must be how it hunts, fixing its prey with those horrible red eyes and then taking them while they stood there helpless. The beast lunged forward the second Adam moved to run away back into the woods. Suddenly his right ankle didn't hurt much anymore. Suddenly nothing mattered except evading this thing. And it was coming for him. But it was taking its time. As Adam advanced back into the woods, up above, he could hear something heavy jumping from tree to tree. It's hunting me. Oh, God, Mom, Daddy, it's hunting me, he cried out in his mind. Why wasn't somebody watching the cameras? Brandon said the place had to be covered with them. And right now, he would have no qualms with going to jail. In fact, he'd love to. And so he screamed as loud as he could, as if to answer him. The thing that was now swinging and jumping from tree to tree let out another deep, guttural roar. It allowed Adam Monroe to make it to the bridge. He didn't know why, but he felt the bridge would serve as a haven. The bridge was lit up brightly. What kind of monster could step into light? Would it not keep it away like a snake to a fire? Every kid knew monsters couldn't stand light. And if this thing wasn't a monster, a real life one, he didn't know what the hell was. For a few moments, as Adam stood on the bridge, bent at the waist, his hands on his knees, he searched his mind for some kind of strategy. His clothes were ripped and tattered and his hair disheveled, but for the nonce, all was relatively quiet. In fact, he could hear it in the trees still, but it sounded far away. It couldn't come into the light. Those glowing eyes did give the hulking beast a nocturnal vibe. He would wait it out. The thing it came out of, that metal box thing these military people kept it locked up in, would have to sound off some kind of alarm, letting it know it was time to re-enter its enclosure. And said alarm would have to sound at least 15 minutes or so before 6 in the morning, although the box's opening process had begun at the stroke of midnight. Can't come into the light. Brandon, you knew, you son of a bitch. And when I get back, it'll be your turn to take a little stroll around this place close to midnight. I'll take you here at gunpoint. I won't even give you the little information about the light. I'll see if you can figure it out. See if you're as smart as I am, old buddy, Adam thought. And the damnedest thing happened. He laughed. Perhaps out of hysterics, but he laughed. I can wait you out, you son of a bitch, he shouted. He knew the creature wouldn't be able to understand him, but he wanted it to hear him. I can wait you out, he yelled yet again. Just as Adam Monroe was finished catching his breath, from about 10 feet behind him, Adam's heart nearly stopped. Everything seemed to stop as something incredibly heavy landed on the bridge. It sounded like a sack full of stones. He wanted to run. He wanted to be still. He wanted to fall over and play dead. He even wanted to turn around, even though he knew what that sound was. It had snuck up on him. The thing was smarter than Adam had given it credit, and apparently it handled light just fine. With his head feeling hot and buzzing, and his veins not pumping blood but ice water, he started swiftly for the railing of the bridge and just barely made it in time to throw himself over. But there was no use. Not only was the thing at least 3 times as fast as Adam, it could climb trees and jump from one to the other with ease. In other words, it appeared the military made the perfect killing machine by crossbreeding animals. In the end, Adam Monroe decided to push himself up to his feet. If he was going to die, it was going to be standing. He watched it leap up and over him, where it hit the water with a hefty splash behind him. Then there came a pain so intense he wondered in awe why God would allow it. The dark-skinned, hairless, except for that coarse horse mane, thing that was part gorilla, part wolf, and perhaps part who knew what else, struck Adam in the back, claws first, and with both hands, and ripped downward, tearing his lungs right out. A large fan of blood sprayed up and out, drenching the creature's chin and chest, but it loved it. It then grabbed him and flung him up in the air like a pillow with the stuffing falling out. When Adam's body landed on the bridge, it did so a corpse. It leapt back up there and landed right beside him. The human was dead. The creature knew. In an almost curious-like fashion, it ran its huge hand over the human's funny-looking face, tearing the human's face off in the process. It was kind of an accident. It didn't know its own strength and didn't even know that it didn't know its own strength. It was too primitive, too savage to think. Hunger seemed to outweigh everything else, everything except the thrill of the hunt, and it loved to hunt. Normally, the humans that kept it in this place would bring it in deer, cats, and dogs. The occasional human would come along, and that was its favorite. The beast shook its elephantine head. Too much thinking. It was hungry, and this human had lots of good meat. It ripped Adam Monroe's corpse limb from limb, making wet, smacking sounds as it ate him. In the end, all that was left were some tattered, bloody clothes, a pair of dirty socks, and shoes that were torn in places. Aside from that, there were a few scattered bones the cleanup crew would have to deal with as soon as they sounded the alarm for the creature to go back into its enclosure. There was also quite a bit of blood that would need cleaning up as well. The entire middle section of the bridge was stained a crimson red, and from the large pools of blood, rivulets ran down either side of the bridge in many places. Lots of it dripped down between the boards where the drops landed in the creek water. Whippoorwills could be heard in the trees of the woods that the track encircled. It was morning, and a fine one at that. Janice Hopper's roommate, Joanne, had told her about this place across College Boulevard. It was some military place, but there was a track there, and they would allow people to use it. Janice had rolled her eyes at her roomie and said, "That's probably the most interesting thing you've ever said." And she began changing into her running attire. Janice stood with her left foot on the blue start-finish line, while her right foot was behind her. She had never run 3 miles before, but she was going to give it her all. A pistol shot sounded in her head as she leapt forward. "Tell me it's back in the box, and all is well, Randall," said Lieutenant Gregory Rigsby. The guard that had been watching the cameras during the night shift maintained that he had seen no vehicles, military or civilian, coming in or going out, and that while he didn't actually see it, he was pretty sure it was inside the box, as they called it. "You're pretty sure, or you're sure? Because that gate is open." "Yes, sir. And it takes it a little while to shut. And that thing in that metal box out there is very fast. And if it ever got out..." "Copy that, sir. I'm sorry I cut you off. I'm on it right now. There, I have a female running on the track," said the guard named Randall Easton, who was seated before a wall of cameras. "And she's allowed to do so unless..." Lieutenant Rigsby leaned over Private Easton and took control of the board. He found the camera that was aimed at the metal box and zoomed in. There was a pressure plate, you see, inside, so that the door would close as soon as the experiment was safely inside. The door was open. Janice Hopper ran and ran, completely unaware she was being watched on camera, as well as off camera, by something she would soon see, if only for a few horrifying moments. Unaware that the gate override had been activated and the gate was now closing, albeit slowly, ahead there was a curve in the trail, although it vanished behind a hill. That was fine by her. She enjoyed surprises. But the surprise that awaited her on the other side of the hill, she wouldn't enjoy. Oh no, not at all. And the powers that be within the military experimental hospital were never notified that it was out. That it, in fact, had never gone back in. And this was because the security officer that was supposed to be watching the 100 cameras the facility used had been up to other things. The moment poor Janice Hopper came around the bend, she had time to see a large metal box thing with the door that was open, before something enormous that was in a tree above dropped down on her and ripped her to pieces in a matter of seconds flat. It had no intentions of eating her. The moment it saw the main gate was open, it tasted freedom. After it had finished feeding on the male human, it had climbed a tree and had taken a nap. It heard the alarm go off for it to return to its enclosure, but it didn't want to. It wasn't until it spotted the female human running along the track that it decided it was very hungry again. But when it looked up and saw through the trees that the main gate was open, it decided not only to dispatch the woman, but to do it quickly and make a go for it. It ran as fast as it could towards the open gate that was slowly rattling shut. It was running and taking great leaps and bounds as lithe as an antelope across the open field. Now everyone in the building knew it was out, and Private Randall Easton knew he was finished. Guards were watching now, rifles drawn. Once the order was given, they fired. Somehow, they had either missed the damn thing, or the 5.56 rounds weren't sufficient enough to put the creature down. The only question was, which was faster, the beast or the gate?